All right. Whoops. Okay. My name is Will Hewitt, and this is my presentation. I decided to look at Michigan smoking in comparison to the low birth weight rates in the state of Michigan. On the purpose, when we were told to think of an idea, I don't know why, but I immediately went to smoking, and I wanted to see. I know there's lots of science behind smoking and its negative effects, on the human body, and especially in particular that I wanted to focus on birth defects. And I initially did lots of birth, all sorts of birth defects, but I found it was easier just to focus on one defect. And I selected a low birth weight because there's lots of data available for it. So I'm looking at the number of smokers in each state and comparing it to the LQ of birth weight per state. And I just wanted to see, that I know that there was science behind this, and it's been proven time and time again. But I wanted to see what that looked like graphically, on a map, cartographically. And so to test my hypothesis, which is that areas with more smokers will also have a higher LQ of low birth weight. So here's the map of Michigan smokers, and it's problematic for two reasons. One, I didn't get a lot of data. There wasn't a lot of data from my source in 2013, especially in the UP and the upper LP, and also that the areas that were, the more red areas, the redder the area is, the more smokers there are. The bluer and violet the areas are, the less there's smoke. Green and yellow are kind of medium there. A little color spectrum for you. But it looks just kind of messy and no real trend, and it's just so sporadic. There is, along the middle of the lower peninsula, there's like a belt across that right here. You can see it. I'll put my cursor there. That looks like there's a high concentration of smokers there, but there's some blue and purple right here for places that don't smoke very much. But besides that, there wasn't a whole lot of trends. I'll talk a little bit more about what I was able to procure from it in a second. The counties with the lowest LQs were Leelanau, Washtenaw, Benzie, Ottawa, Oakland, and Livingston. The high LQs were Gladwin, Wexford, Manistee, Dickinson, Muskegon, and Clare. Now, there's some observations that I made, some trends that I did after some inspection after a while. So at first it looks like it's seemingly random, but then and there was that high concentration of smokers along the middle of the state. But what I did look at, and I was looking at some of these low LQs, and I was thinking that these are some of the more wealthy counties, traditionally wealthy counties in Michigan. So I looked up some data from countyhealthrankings.org and looked at in 2013, and sure enough, these six were among the highest median income housing counties in the state. And while these counties over here weren't the lowest, they certainly weren't the highest, and they were on the lower end of the spectrum. So I think it's interesting that that while there really isn't a rhyme or reason for appear to be a rhyme or reason for just the randomness of this map, there is the more traditionally wealthy counties do smoke less, and just because there's wealthy counties, kind of spread out all over the state, and that's why it makes for a really sporadic map. This is my map for the low birth weight, which turned out to look much better because you can see the trend, the obvious trend, that northern counties, especially in the UP, have a very low LQ for low birth weight, and the more south you go, there's especially in the lower peninsula, there's a very high LQ for low birth weight. And so the low LQ counties are Iron, Leelanau, Ontonagon, Oscoda, Alger, and Roscommon, which would be low lower numbers of low birth weight. High LQs are Wayne, Genesee, Saginaw, Muskegon, Kent, and Berrien. And some observations, the most obvious trend from going from north to south, low LQ to high LQ. There's no real connection to income like smoking had, but there is a connection to more densely populated areas to have a higher LQ for low birth weight. Obviously, the north, the UP, is much less sparsely populated than areas like Detroit or Grand Rapids or just southwest and southeast Michigan. And these areas, much more populated, densely populated, and also have much higher rates of low birth weight. Here are the two maps compared side by side, and once again, it's really hard to procure any comparison between the two, just because one, the smoking map isn't necessarily that helpful, but it was interesting to see those two trends that almost kind of appeared out of the blue, which is not what I intended, but it doesn't, obviously smoking is a contributing factor to birth effects, and that includes low birth weight. But it definitely appears that there are other factors at work besides smoking that contribute to low birth weight. So, some observations between the two comparisons: that there's no obvious correlation between the two maps. The only two consistent extreme counties are Leelanau and Muskegon. If you look at the LQs, the low LQ Leelanau appears up here. Muskegon is in the high LQ for smoking, and then Muskegon is also in the high for low birth weight, and then Leelanau up here for the low LQ for birth weight. Was that birth weight or smoke? Birth weight. My bad. Smoking is most influenced by income, and birth weight is mostly influenced by population density. There's certainly a correlation. This is kind of like a conclusive statement here. There's certainly a correlation between the two, as many studies have shown. However, based on my maps, there seems to be other factors besides smoking that cause low birth weight. What would I change about my presentation, my experiment, my findings? I would want to investigate. I now am curious to see what the legitimacy is behind smoking and median income, what the relationship between that is, why that I see a correlation between that, those two, and then also low birth weight and population density. What kind of impact would that have on low birth weight, and why does it seem evident from my map? And that is all I have for you. Thanks for listening. Although my results weren't necessarily what I was looking for, I did find some interesting information out, and it was cool to find out. So, thank you.